right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be here with you today. We just had an amazing conversation outside in the hallway.
Should we repeat it?
We might.
Okay.
I want to start off by talking about your history at Eli Lilly. You have been there for a long time. You rose up through the ranks at Lilly before becoming chair and CEO. How does that experience, that time that you had, inform your decision-making now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really blessed to have almost accidentally landed at Lilly and had end up in this role. I think there's probably three things I think about that really were valuable about sticking with a company a long time. One is, our business, drug discovery, is a slow motion game, painfully slow at times. I think the average development time from idea to FDA approval is about 14 years in the industry. So it kind of helps to have seen that a couple times before you're making decisions about it. The second thing is it's a very cross-functional activity, from lab scientists to clinicians like yourself who do design clinical trials, to manufacturing, to people who face customers. So, understanding and having a chance to lead all those parts was particularly helpful. And it's a people business, and connecting all those parts matters. And I think coming into a company as a CEO in pharma without knowing anybody would be very hard. We work a lot with a lot of informal structures, and I think that's been useful, just to have bounced off people for a long time and be able to pick up the phone and call, senior people, but junior people, and make things happen.
And could you share your perspective at this time on what you think are the most promising technological advancements that are shaping the pharmaceutical industry today?
Incretins for weight loss.
Which we'll get to. I promise.
But that's an end product of maybe what you're really asking about. This is a conference about AI and technology. Of course, that's on the list. Maybe you'd be surprised to hear, I actually don't think it's been the most important thing lately. Probably the two most important things which have come together, and maybe information technology will add to this sort of in a snowball effect, of course, was mapping the human genome so we can work against true underlying cause of disease versus working from symptoms backwards. That really changed the industry, of course, because then we can create knockout models and replicate human disease in animals and really attack things from different ways. So everything was empiric before that. I think after that, now we're designing for a problem. And then the other side, which is, if we understand then sort of the lock in biology we're trying to unlock, how about making better keys? That's what a medicine is. And I think here as well, there's been an explosion in imaging technology, whether it be microscopy or other imaging techniques that allow you to see first in 2D, then in 3D, and now actually like in movies of how proteins are folding and unfolding and how a drug might intervene in a way that's desirable. So those two things have produced, I think, an acceleration in innovation. Now we'll see what advances information technology can add to that.
And there's so much conversation around personalized medicine. How do you see this helping us personalize and tailor drugs to the individual patient?
Yeah, I think a prior panelist I heard said something interesting, which is precision versus personalized. I think mostly our job is precision, if personalizing is the non-therapeutic intervention parts. But definitely precision medicine's here. It's an attractive way to develop drugs. I think for serious disease, it's a very important shift. So we're working in Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative conditions, and here's a field that needs precision medicine. We used to diagnose those conditions by dementia symptoms, and then now we can image the brain and find proteins that are causing the aberration and address those directly. That's a big unlock, and will allow us to sort of redefine disease and tear apart the problem, and therefore make a bigger difference. I think, on the other hand, though, boy, is it useful to have drugs that kind of work in everybody and are safe and effective. Because the big health problems are actually more like that, right? Where we have common tens of millions of people need to get better. So, we all witnessed the COVID vaccine and what a miracle that is. That's an example of that. Again, I think some of the technology we're working on in weight loss and cardiovascular and diabetes fit into that category. We probably need both. So I just don't want to ignore that side of it, which is just getting what we would call therapeutic index, enough safety and enough efficacy in the same package that you can use drugs very broadly.
And you mentioned Alzheimer's. Lilly's made headlines lately for some major breakthroughs, particularly when it comes to Alzheimer's, but also diabetes and obesity. As a leader in an industry where many of your investments may fail, how do you evaluate what you're going to focus on?
Yeah, well, most panels I get questions about those two, and it's interesting because we've been working on those problems since the late 90s. And so I think while everyone wants to talk about them at once, and we do have some, I think we've reached sort of a step change in what's possible, the reality is that those classes, those ideas have been worked on for some time. It's a reminder that like drug discovery is brutally hard. And in both cases, interestingly, like in the incretins, GLP, we launched the first GLP drug in the world in 2004.
Which most people don't
know.
know.
But because it had a narrow therapeutic index, it was hard to take, it was multiple shots a day, now we're at weekly, and weight loss profile was modest, and glucose control was modest, but it was a new mechanism, and then you improve it, and then you improve it. Most of the work is like that, versus some flash of like, oh, aha, now we have this. And so that's a good reminder. So one of the things we think about, we're an old company, we've never been bought or sold. I think we're the only drug company left that has just like one name, or didn't absorb other names. It's a long-term business. And I think investing through those cycles is important to find big ideas. And we're drawn to big ideas. Where is there a lot of human suffering? And where is there tractable technology to apply to it? And when those things converge, go to work. And have an expectation that it might be a couple decades. So like, what's the next one is often the question. What else? I mean, pain.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Hugely common, terrible drugs today.
Yeah.
I think you make a good argument that opioids wouldn't even be approved by the FDA if submitted as new drugs today under the current criteria, and maybe they shouldn't be. So what's going to replace that? And I think that's drugs, companies like Lilly need to solve that problem. Non-addictive, good pain drugs.
So you opened the door to the conversation about obesity medications, and I think we have to talk about that just briefly. But in my practice, we were talking outside, I would say now 60 to 70% of the patients I'm seeing are asking about these drugs, are interested in finding out more. We're having these conversations that we never used to have. And there's obviously an issue with getting the drugs. So even if people get approved, so how do you propose we increase access to the people who may need this, especially in light of the fact that Mounjaro is now poised to get approved for obesity?
Yeah, we're expecting that soon. So you're getting a lot of requests. We haven't even started marketing it yet, so beware. Well, I mean, first of all, there's a number of challenges here. Of course, this class of drugs is amazing. They tend to work broadly, and they're pretty safe. They do have side effects, but they're mostly tolerability versus some chronic side effect. And they're addressing a little bit of sort of a root cause thing, societal issue that causes a lot of downstream disease. So, I don't think it's an underestimate to say these drugs could change the life expectancy of the country if we use them right. And we think of our mission like that. So, first problem is making enough. There's 100 million Americans who are overweight or obese, and there's the other 100 million adults. Half of them are on their way to overweight or obese. They're above target BMI. So this is a huge societal problem. We probably should change our food system, but that's a separate panel maybe. In the meantime, they'll be pretty useful. That's a scale of drug use that we don't normally see. Just to put, so 100 million potential targets. If you ask a question on high LDL, I think it's 45 million.
Yeah.
So it's double cholesterol management. Those are small molecule pills, which there's tons of existing assets and infrastructure to make globally. These are parenteral biologic proteins, which there isn't a ton of. So probably Novo and Lilly have 90% of the capacity already captivated for these two drugs, Mounjaro and Ozempic. And to get more, we have to build more. It's about a 3-year cycle time to put a plant up. So if I make a new decision today, in 2026, we get more volume. It's going to be frustrating for a little while. That's just a comment. So what do we do in that context? We need to make sure they go to the people intended. I feel very strongly about that. I'm sure you might as well. There's a lot of people who don't have a clinical manifestation of overweight or obesity, and we probably need to be more careful than we are today in prescribing and use. We need to help employers understand who to pay for and who to not, because that's also been a determinant of who gets it. And clearly, BMIs over 30 with comorbid cardiovascular risk factors, that's a good target. I think you'll see good financial return, but particularly good life expectancy return. How do we make sure that that's more universally paid for, like a health product, versus people who don't have those conditions and get it paid for now? Maybe there should be more out of pocket for those people because it's acting more like a cosmetic medicine. That's a refinement in the health system that doesn't exist and it needs to be stood up and created. I suspect a lot of employers will be looking for solutions to do that. And in the meantime, they're going to slap prior authorizations and stuff on all this, and it's going to be paperwork in the doctor's office.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, but that screams for a new industry kind of to emerge there.
Well, one of the focuses of this conference is how science and technology are converging around healthcare. Can you tell us how Lilly is using cutting-edge technology like AI, which we were speaking about, and how do you see AI as sort of impacting healthcare more broadly?
Yeah, great topic. Obviously, it's hard to go to any convening without talking about AI these days. I think about it at three levels. There's kind of the surface area that a lot of companies have of interacting with your marketplace, interacting with suppliers and collaborators and getting work done, essentially, in ways that are reasonably common across healthcare and non-healthcare. Here, our strategy is just to buy what's built. Don't try to be the innovator there. That's not core to our model, but probably can make a pretty big difference, and I'll loop back on that in a second. Then we have sort of operational problems, which are pretty tractable with AI and maybe not so sexy sounding, but the solutions will make a difference pretty quickly. For instance, we were talking about identifying patients in cancer clinical trials. There's this huge problem of all these appended PDFs inside medical records that have an old test that was conducted where there was no drug or trial available, but now there is, and this patient's now progressed, they're in their second line of cancer. How do we find those people? That's a machine problem, not a human problem. And everybody wins if we find them faster, the patient, the system, the drug developer. I think that's pretty tractable and could help us quickly. Other manufacturing problems, eking out 10% improvements in productivity when we're running out of a drug, that's quite useful. And we're turning these machines loose on those problems and getting pretty quick results. Of course, drug discovery is what everyone wants to talk about. Yeah. And as I said, it's sort of an additive element at this point, but a pretty interesting one. How we're using generative AI, like in chemical, organic chemistry, medchem, is producing an interesting phenomena where really the people are better at refinement, but the machine is better at the starting point. So chemical space is huge. I'm told it's 10 to the 60th in terms of potential solutions for a particular problem. Humans are good at logic that goes branch and tree. We know what we know yesterday and we take one iteration difference. But chemistry has so many variables. The machine creates new starting points. And our chemists look at that, they're like, that's odd. We've never seen a drug that looked like that. But we'll start working on the idea, and they tend to iterate off of that, and has already produced a number of preclinical candidates that are really novel and behaving well. So that's interesting. So here the machine is more creative than the person in a way, but once the person gets a hold of it, they can refine it into something that actually can make it forward. None of those machine molecules are going to turn into drugs, but the iteration from the human will. That's fascinating. Another one, which is speeding up drug development, is protein and antibody optimization. So we've made protein therapeutics and antibodies for a long time. There's a lot of data we have, and you have to do a lot of predictive steps as a scientist to say, okay, which one of these will turn out to have more drug-like properties? The computer's really good at that, especially if it knows what you did before. So that's speeding up antibody discovery and protein therapeutic discovery like tirzepatide. Yeah.
Right, and we talked about how that matters for a lot of people who are suffering with the disease and want a drug available quickly.
If we can compress those timelines, but every day matters.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I think for Northwell and other healthcare, to me, it occurs to me that the biggest problem in healthcare isn't those things. The biggest problem in healthcare is access and pricing. And I'm worried about that. We had some
Why?
optimists about AI, because I think that's not an accident. I mean, there are business models and large corporations who have produced a system that reduce access on purpose. So the question maybe for the room is it more likely that those entities leverage AI to get better at that? That's a frightening world. Or is it more likely that people who are trying to improve access and affordability embrace AI and win? We have a partner we've worked with. A lot of drug companies have specialty drugs, and in that case in particular, there's tons of prior authorizations and forms to fill out, et cetera. So we have these service centers that work with a doctor's practice and say, okay, we'll do some of that lifting with you. So we've automated that in AI. So you literally have a bot calling call centers of like Aetna and Cigna and like working through PA processes. And when you listen to the audio of this, it like just fills you with glee because you have a machine like who will wait on hold forever. They don't care, right? That will answer every question asked. And it's good, large language is good at this, right?
Yeah.
So the operators, which are humans, so more expensive, employed by the insurance companies, are being defeated by the bots working for good. I want more of that in future of healthcare. But you can imagine that same technology, it would take not very many computer scientists to flip it around and have the most empowered anti-approval bots known to man that a human doctor then has to call and work with, or your staff. That's a terrible future. And I think, I hope that somehow the good guys win here, but I think that's a worrisome space.
Yeah, I mean, who's overseeing?
It's just profit interest, right? So that's what drives it.
As a leader of one of the world's most innovative healthcare companies, what do you see as the obstacles to innovation? Are we talking things that are regulatory, cultural, or something else?
Well, in our business, the biggest obstacle is biology. I mean, these are really complex problems. And the easy ones got solved first. So the hard ones, particularly like brain disease, I mean, makes cancer look easy. So, that's the real hard stuff. We're cracking away at that. That's, I think, our job to do that. But there are other hard problems. I mean, you mentioned regulatory and government. I think these are really low-performing parts of the economy and not very responsive to input. And, they're suffering increasingly all around the world from a problem of expertise. Maybe some people here worked in regulators, but it's not that rewarding. So I don't think the best and the brightest are sitting in these agencies. And increasingly, they've adopted policies that they can't even ask experts because we all have conflicts, according to somebody. That's a problem for us. I think the global regulators for drugs are not getting better.
Would you care to make any bold healthcare predictions for us?
Well, related to us, I think there is a world we could have. I had this conversation with a foreign government which has a centralized healthcare system. We can draw on paper a world where we don't have obesity, and that's interesting. And I think will shift life expectancy to the right and change a lot of other medical care. We're doing, at this point, we have 36 phase 3 studies going on hard outcomes, including reduction in heart attack, stroke, all the obvious ones, but also some non-obvious things, like low back pain surgery, which probably can be cut dramatically if people have healthy body weight. So it is a little bit of a master switch problem. And when we figure out how to make enough of these, and we do have an oral one coming, that's a tractable problem that could have huge societal impact. That's a prediction. I think that will happen in our lifetimes. It won't happen in a few years, but it will happen in our lifetime.
I mean, what do you think about the fact that we're finally at this point where we're saying that obesity is not because you just, it's your fault. It is a problem
Super important point.
And we've changed the narrative now to talk more about the set points, the body's reaction to starvation and how it tries to get back to that level. And it's about all of these other processes that are involved that are so much more complicated than just, I don't have the willpower.
Yeah, I mean, this is, and we had a huge study published last year in the New England Journal, the tirzepatide first obesity study, 22.5% body weight reduction in a year. That was amazing. The second most amazing thing was the placebo, which people get saline, but also both arms got 600 calorie reduction per day and 150 minutes of exercise, which I guarantee you no one in the study was doing before on their own.
Yeah.
So that's best standard of care, and that's what you probably prescribe if you don't have a weight loss drug. It doesn't work. Those people lost 2% of their body weight in 52 weeks. That's 5 pounds. And so I don't know how many clinicians in the room who like ask their patients to do that, and then they come back and they're not change their weight.
Yeah.
I'm not saying those things can't work. They can if you're more intensive about it, but nobody can tolerate that regimen. You need to go more than 600 calories, you need more exercise, and you sustain that for the rest of your life. There's something about defending our body weight that's a genetic trait that allowed us to survive famines, and I think we need to understand that. But you said it's normalizing. I don't know we're close to normalizing that yet. I think most people in society and most people in healthcare system would rather think this is just someone who doesn't want to restrict what they eat and exercise. We were talking backstage, but I think my wife's a pediatrician. I mean, ultimately, where does this go? I think that is actually the population we should be intervening in first from a public health perspective, because that set point probably gets solidified in
puberty,
adolescence.
right, yeah.
And once it's there, you're going to defend it. And it's hard to, it's hard to beat that unless you have a great drug. But we all like to solve this problem without drugs eventually.
10 years from now, if we're both sitting on this stage together again, what will we be talking about at that point?
Well, I hope we're talking about brain diseases more.
Yeah.
Neuropsych is a huge problem, and it's not actually changing much. It might be getting worse globally. And so those are really hard science problems, and they're really hard societal problems. I think the spectrum from addiction to, genetically defined diseases like ALS and Alzheimer's are all hard. And I think that's a place where our sector and healthcare systems can partner to make a bigger difference faster. In the meantime, there's so much suffering. I mean, the care delivery model there is totally broken. And maybe AI can help with that. I don't know. What I've seen so far, I'm less optimistic.
I mean, I think that also mental health, you and I spoke about.
Yeah, including in that, psychiatry. I mean, that's a major issue.
Yeah. Well, I think we are out of time.
Okay, great conversation.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here today. Thank you.
All right, great.